Okay, Peter again here, and I'm with Alex Rollins Berg, who is the writer-director of the short film Hold Up that we've just had in the festival this afternoon.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us, Alex.
Pleasure to be here.
All the way from America, we should say.
That's right.
Fantastic. So pleased that you have made the trip and welcome to the festival.
Thank you for having us.
So, Hold Up. Where did the inspiration come from to write this?
Well, it's based on a real encounter that I had in the subways at the height of the pandemic. I was coming home, actually a film that showed here at the last year's festival. I was coming home from the director's house as a producer on that film. I'm an electric lampshade, and he lives in Harlem. And I was coming home from like an editing session for that film, and I was approached on the subway by an Eritrean man, just like you saw in the film, trying to sell me a bottle of lotion. And we had an interaction that I loosely based this story off of. It was a moment, I'm sure it was like this in London as well, where the streets were just empty, and it was really, really strange to be in the city. It was very disintegrated, you know. I hadn't seen anyone really other than my wife for like months before I ventured out for that time, and to just be approached by someone in this way and to have that exchange was very, very intense. And it really left, you know, a pretty deep scar. Just I've thought of him ever since, and yeah, I really wanted to make a movie about that.
And what kind of time was that? Was that pre-pandemic or during?
No, it was like the height of it. It was in the dead of winter, like December 2020 or so.
Okay. And how long did it take to get that idea down onto the page?
Well, it happened very quickly. I made the film the following summer, summer of 2021. So yeah.
And your shoot, so how long did it take you to shoot the film?
We shot the film in 2 days. We rehearsed a little bit. I rehearsed with Renard Palmer, the great actor, who's just fantastic. He's gonna just take off. He's in a wonderful off-Broadway show right now. But he had never done anything before. Okay. And I found him through casting, and it was just like this amazing discovery, and he's just become like a wonderful collaborator for me, and we're gonna work again. But anyway, we did some rehearsing the night before on Friday. We did that subway stuff. We stole that location. It's really impossible to get permits to shoot in the subway. Okay. So we spent like a month going around every single subway stop. Kind of felt like a heist or something we were pulling off, you know, to find the perfect one. So yeah, we got him in there, made him comfortable. He did great. He's just an incredible actor. So yeah.
So is it a real subway? Is actually part of the subway, or did you recreate it?
Oh, 100% real. Right. Yeah, no recreation here. In fact, I shot most of the film exactly where the actual interaction took place, which was fun. Like lent another level of, you know, authenticity to it, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. So were both parts open casting, or how did you do the both parts?
Well, Philip Ettinger is an actor was one of my favorite actors, actually. He's in the film First Reformed, and he's in the HBO show I Know This Much Is True. He's just like one of the top 5 actors, I think, working today. And when I thought of making this film, I thought of him immediately. Having no connection with him, I reached out through his managers, and luckily he said yes. So that was a real big win for the film, I thought.
I know you've made quite a lot of films yourself in different roles and things, so you write, and direct, and produce as well. How do you go about finding funding?
Well, different ways. For this one, we partnered with 501c3, which is a non-profit called Fractured Atlas, and we were able to raise the money to make the film through private donations. Right now, I'm a teacher at NYU, thankfully, and I've been fortunate enough to make something like 24 short films this year alone through their financing, which is, they're low budget films, but you know, if you have just a little bit of, you know, camera equipment and stuff and some great actors, you can make really fun stuff.
What kind of films do you make in those shorts? Is it a variety of things? What do you enjoy making the most?
it's a big variety. Right now, I mean, after making this film, which was quite, as you might have experienced, quite serious, I felt like really making some comedic work. A lot of the NYU students, you know, they've been affected by lockdown too, and we just really wanted to jump in and make some kind of comedy and some horror stuff, some more genre stuff. So it was really fun to learn how to do that. Yeah.
And what do you teach at NYU?
I'm teaching actors how to behave on set. So, you know, directing actors, and I teach a development course, and we just make stuff basically all the time.
Okay. What's your favourite, you know, you write, you direct, you produce, what's your favourite part and why? Which role is your favourite?
Boy, I love directing. I would have said acting, or sorry, not acting, writing a year ago, but I just think being amongst people, being at a film festival with real people as opposed to virtual festivals, which we've experienced for the past couple of years, is just such a joy. And just being on set and being silly and making stuff is just the greatest.
So let's go back to Hold Up for a little bit. So what was your, obviously you said it was a story that, you know, was born out of something that happened, an event that happened to you, and what did you bring to it? Because obviously it's a film that sort of talks about maybe our unconscious bias or prejudice or whatever. What part of the idea interested you the most?
A lot of different aspects of it. I think, for one, this might not be self-evident. I wanted to tell a story about men and male vulnerability, and I thought it was interesting in this encounter and in the film that both characters are experiencing a level of vulnerability. And I also think just for everybody that daily life is a constant battle between, you know, like love and fear and compassion and aggression. And I think both of those characters that in the film are experiencing that to some degree. And those are two ideas that really made me want to make this film.
It touches on homelessness and things like that, isn't it? And that's obviously a thing I think no part of the world is a stranger to, unfortunately. I understand in New York in particular, it's a real big problem.
Absolutely, and certainly those. That's just something that, you know, I live in New York and have for many years now. And the second that you leave your door, you're confronted with it. And I guess it's always disturbed me that the polite, kind of accepted thing to do in neoliberal, cosmopolitan areas is just to ignore those people. And in the pandemic, that just got worse and worse. And there were people living right outside of my house during the height of the pandemic under some scaffolding. And it was just awful and just always on my mind. So I wanted to make this film to confront that and to confront, those kinds of that you know, issue within myself and within kind of the way that we treat each other.
In the making of the film, did your attitudes kind of evolve, or did you have discussions on the set about this kind of thing? Did other people bring experiences that they had to the film, the other actors?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, everybody had some experiences like this living in a big city. I think this is a very relatable kind of scenario. But I guess in an unexpected way, what it helps me do personally was kind of reintegrate with the city and with people around me, and to get back on a film set, experience that joy that I was talking about before. Coming out of the pandemic, that was really, really, really important to me, and it was a really special experience. I didn't think of what else I was going to say. No, that's it for now.
So let's talk about challenges then. There's always challenges on filmmaking. What was the greatest challenge to yourself?
Well, you know, just getting the movie together, and it was the biggest budget I personally raised. I wanted to pay all of the crew members. It didn't seem fair to ask people to work for free coming out of the pandemic when they hadn't been able to. So we raised enough money to pay most of the crew, and that was a challenge. I thought I had funding that fell through, and I had to figure out, you know, one of those situations. So I had to figure out where to get it, and we got it together, and we made the film. Yeah, that was the main challenge, I think.
Was there any films that you had in mind, maybe not so much with the theme, but you can correct me if that's wrong, but maybe with the way you shot it that you looked at? or what kind of films are you influenced by?
Sure. Well, Ramin Barani, the filmmaker, is a big influence of mine, and his film Man Push Cart was a big influence on the film photographically. And then kind of spiritually or thematically, I really like the works of Ruben Östlund, who makes films like Force Majeure. I don't know if you guys have seen that, or The Square. He really makes films about uncomfortable truths that we sort of hide from, and he confronts them in a way that sort of illuminates them. And I think that's something I try to do in my work as well.
And what are you working on now? What kind of things are you making more projects at NYU or whatever?
Yeah, I'm in post on a lot of things. I have a series that's in post right now, and I'd love to go out and make a feature next. I think I've done enough shorts for now, and I'd love to just do a long feature-length film.
What kind of feature? What kind of themes?
I have a couple things. I have a project set in an iPhone factory that I wrote a few years ago. That's a big project that would take place in Nepal and Malaysia that I started researching, and I went over there right before the pandemic that I'd love to get together. That's kind of the big project. And then I have a small, fun kind of horror film called Wilding. That's a lower budget feature that I'd like to do.
We have a horror festival, by the way.
Yeah.
Romford, so let us know. Are there any audience questions at this point?
Yeah, I've got a quick one before I go over.
Okay.
Alex,
Yes.
you said that you stole the scene in the subway.
Yeah.
How difficult, forgetting the subway, how difficult is it to actually shoot anywhere in New York?
Good question. It's incredibly easy to shoot in most places in New York. There are a couple places like the subway that are more challenging. The subway is not, I called the MTA and I asked them, which is like the subway authority in New York. I called them up and I asked them, well, if I wanted to do this legitimately, how much would it cost? And they told me for 4 hours, it would cost $40,000 to shoot in there. And I asked the lady, who has ever paid that? And she said, Jennifer Lopez once paid for a subway shoot, and no one else. They sold subway shoots for Black Swan, the Darren Aronofsky film. They just went in there and stole it because it's just too expensive to film there. So it's one of the most difficult places to shoot.
I'm genuinely surprised you just didn't reach into your back pocket, get out your card and read the numbers off just like that. Right, I've got a question here for you.
What was the most interesting thing you learned whilst filming this project?
Very good question. I think I learned about casting. I felt intimidated by the casting process and sort of thinking, I don't know if I'll make the right choice or whatever. But it's so interesting when you cast, you have this visceral, almost instantaneous reaction to someone, and then you meet them and you find out they're professional and reliable. And that's really all there was to it. And I feel like you're never really guided wrong by your instincts in the casting process. And it's just something that intimidates you until you do it, and then suddenly it's the most natural and intuitive thing in the world. And I think that was the biggest lesson. Thank you.
Hi, so as a viewer, I found myself near the end of the short thinking, oh, will the guy go back to the subway and offer the couch or something? So my question is, would you consider taking it further? Because just as a viewer, I thought, well, it could go on longer. I know it was short and sweet, but would you consider, maybe making a follow-up or something?
Well, that's very nice of you to say that. I don't know. I mean, I think part of it was I didn't want to wrap it up because that's just not the way it was in my case. In my case, I didn't run away or anything, but in my case, he did ask to stay on my couch, and it was the height of the pandemic and all sorts of other, and I just had to say, I'm sorry, I had to cut the cord there. But I feel like it changed me. I feel like it really, really left a mark, as I was saying. And it was important. What I hope for the film to do is to leave that mark as well on a viewer. So to wrap it up, it would have been sort of dishonest to the experience and what I was trying to say. So I like the fact that it ends the way it does, because it leaves you unsettled, and it leaves the issue unsettled, because the issue is unsettled and it's tragic.
So obviously there's undertones of sort of, a racial problem, if you like, suspicion. Have you played it to black audiences, and what's their response?
Much more positive than white audiences, if you can believe it. I think it's a film that makes, anecdotally, I don't know for sure, but I think it's a film that makes white, particularly liberal audiences very uncomfortable in ways that it hasn't, at least this is what I've heard, from black audiences who have taken to the film much more quickly and unequivocally. So that's just been an interesting thing. I wasn't really sure how that'd be perceived. And the reality is it was all sort of built around that sort of, you're kind of tricked into feeling those fears. We use, techniques and camera and sound design and stuff like that to bring you into the experience of that protagonist. But at the end, you realize, there's really nothing for him to fear exactly in that situation. So yeah, that's been the experience so far.
Hi. So after this experience, particularly challenging technically as well, what kind of subject matter are you drawn to for your next foray into movies?
Well, the iPhone factory idea, which I described to you, I'm really, generally speaking, really interested in things that, you see and you ignore. So I'm just trying to sort of I'm always looking for things that either in myself or in society or anywhere that, things we walk by or people that are marginalized or invisible in some way, and finding a way to bring their lives to the screen and to illuminate their experiences in some way that resonates with me, building those bridges, I think. I think that's the height of what cinema can do, is bring us into another experience and illuminate our own experiences. That's just a general sort of formula or something for my sensibility.
I thought the look of terror in the guy's eyes above his mask was absolutely brilliant. I mean, through that he managed to create the terror all through his body, but actually I was quite disturbed by the subject matter and the portrayal in that film. Why did you choose to have two black extras looking very menacing and swarthy in the street? What kind of contribution do you think that makes to the racial tension that exists in your country and ours?
It was important. Those are two wonderful actors too, Moses and Alfonso, and they were there. They're just standing there on the street, and they were just, I wanted you to know that this is not a white neighborhood necessarily, and that he was not in a white neighborhood. Harlem is not a white neighborhood. And so I wanted to establish that. And I didn't want to give it, I didn't want to tilt it that way, but I wanted you to bring it into his sort of paranoid frame of mind. So that's the way we depicted that moment.
I had one last question for you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received as a filmmaker from other people?
I think the best piece of advice would be just to kind of give in to the moment, not be too, it's like filmmaking is a little bit like surfing in the sense that you're collaborating with natural elements that are beyond your control. And you just have to sort of accept them as they come.
Yeah, I think, or was it Orson Welles said that filmmaking is a happy series of accidents, or overlooking a happy series of accidents?
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Right.
Alex, thank you so much for bringing your film to the festival and coming all this way. Really appreciate it. Lovely to meet you, and best of luck with the film going forward and all your other projects.